Ladies and gents, the time is once again upon us where I feel the need to make another Ashes of Creation update video, because the last 3 months of Ashes live streams have each shown considerable progress. Unfortunately for me, this means that certain parts of that big overview update video I made for Ashes 3 months ago is already out of date. No worries though, just means more potential content in the future. So today we're going to discuss the updates from the live streams in August, September and October, covering topics such as the updated world map and world size, the basic hybrid combat system for the Ranger archetype, the newly showcased gathering system which completely blew me away, and some spiciness in the Ashes of Creation community. If you want to support my Ashes of Creation coverage, then click my referral link, which everyone has access to, in the description below. Additionally, if you're a talented developer, Ashes of Creation are currently hiring people for the following job roles on screen, and from November 4th to November 5th, the Ashes team are doing their yearly 24-hour Pathfinder livestream set in the world of Vera to raise money for San Diego Children's Hospital. So first, let's discuss the most recent Ashes livestream, as for me personally, this was the one that surprised me the most, the update to the game's gathering system. So in the past when I've covered this game during its Alpha 1 test back in 2021, something that felt pretty bad to me was the gathering system. You'd see tons of trees, rocks and plants in the world, but you could only mine, chop or gather the things that had a gold sparkle around them. This at a time when New World had just released the best MMO gathering system we'd ever seen, with every resource you can see being gatherable. The Ashes system felt kinda lackluster in comparison. This wasn't something that I personally expected to change, as the game was already super ambitious. It was kind of unreasonable to think that they'd also add the New World style gathering system on top of everything else they were doing. Well, turns out that isn't the case.
I love the new UI.
Oh, I know. And the sound. Get ready. It's happening. Oh my gosh! Within an area, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Talk to me a little bit about surveying.
A nice wide in shape to scan as much of the area as possible.
The Mad Lads at Intrepid actually did it. Every tree, rock or plant you see in the world is now gatherable. Not only that, but they also added physics and collision to gathering too. Notice how the tree falls, then bounces off the giant rock. Look at the way the branches actually have weight to them when it falls, and the way dust kicks up from the ground as it lands. The game's not even in Alpha 2 yet, and visually, the gathering looks more satisfying than any other MMO, perhaps with the exception of New World. Mining rocks in Ashes of Creation also seems more interesting than the standard MMO, as most of the time you won't know what mineral is inside until you've split the rock open and can see the contents. Here for example, you can see that the rock contains iron ore, but before you've mined it you wouldn't know. With some randomness to this system, it would kinda prevent the problem that New World had for a while, of bots just camping orichalcum veins in the world 24/7. Harvesting also looks really nice, and Steven mentioned that some of the plants will be seasonal, some only growing in the winter and others only available in the summer. During this livestream for demonstration purposes, they had the respawn rates turned up extremely high. Resources won't respawn this fast in the live game, but it's cool that they've animated the process of trees slowly regrowing. It kinda reminded me of seeing trees in Arcade slowly grow and only be gatherable once fully matured. Other aspects of gathering that were mentioned include things like a surveying skill to help identify resources in an area. Multiplayer gathering is something that's being looked into, so similar to Lost Ark, if 2 players go to chop a tree then they'll saw it down together. And apparently land management is also going to be a factor. If too many people constantly ravage a certain area for its resources, then those resources might respawn slower. Overall, I was extremely impressed by this early look at the new gathering system for the game, and I expect it to improve even more as development goes on with further polish, improved animations and balancing. They've literally taken the best part of New World and put it in their game, as if the hype levels couldn't go any higher. Moving on to the September livestream, we saw a preview of the updated hybrid combat system for the Ranger class archetype, and holy shit, look at the audio-visual feedback on display here.
Take that guy down.
So they, in the intervening time, they've gotten stronger. They've kind of found some techniques, some help.
More powerful. You can hold this, and when you see that little flash there at the end, that indicates that it's fully charged.
That's a strong ability.
Airstrike does a lot of things. It moves the character and the AoE, and also removes the targets. It's definitely up there.
Yeah, that ability is so rad.
I love that you can see the limbs of the bow flexing for the powerful attacks. You can hear the tension in the strings, the whistling of the arrow as it flies through the air, as well as impactful hit effects. My favourite ability displayed was Airstrike. Leaping through the air, excellent mobility, raining down arrows in the process. This has got to be up there as one of the coolest ranger abilities I've ever seen in an MMORPG. Something you've probably noticed about the Ranger Combat Showcase is that it leaned a bit more to the tab targeting style rather than the action combat style that was shown off with the Greatsword in the past. Apparently, some people were upset with this and was expecting full action combat, which has never been the goal of Ashes at any point. The goal has always been hybrid combat system where you press a hotkey to switch between the two modes of tab and action. When you do use the bow in action mode, you can use your abilities and attack even if you don't have a target selected, just like in Guild Wars 2. I think some people have concerns about balancing between tab and action, but at this point I think it's the kind of thing that needs to be tested and balanced before we debate it too much. Personally, I'd expect certain classes to work better in action mode, such as warriors with their cleaving attacks, and other classes to work better in tab targeting, such as rangers that are primarily known for single target focused DPS. That being said, the combat design goal is also that you can create different builds that are more action or tab depending on your preference. As we've only seen basic ranger attack plus 3 abilities, I don't think you should throw your toys out the pram just yet, as I'm sure there'll be more action combat centric ranger builds possible in the future as more abilities are added. As a whole though, I've been super impressed with the past 2 combat showcases. The game's come a long way since Alpha 1, and I personally can't wait to see what they do with mage combat. I've said multiple times in the past that I expect Ashes combat to be similar to Guild Wars 2 but better, more impactful, more grounded with better audio-visual feedback. So far it seems like my prediction for this is on target to come true. Next up, the development livestream from August, and this was the one that made my most recent Ashes vid outdated 2 weeks after it released. Thanks for that, Stephen. So previously, the world size was 480 kilometers squared and the world would contain 103 regular nodes. This is a picture of the old world map. After some internal testing though, the team realised that it needed to be rebalanced, as with 103 nodes on a 480 square kilometer map, there wasn't enough space between the nodes. This is the new Ashes of Creation map. This one is 1,200 kilometers squared, and instead of 103 regular nodes, it's been reduced down to 85. So the world size has essentially increased by 2.5x. Some would say this is feature creep, but the fact that they've actually reduced the number of nodes, I would have to disagree, and I see it more as rebalancing. Just to give some context to the scale of this world, Stephen said it would take roughly 75 minutes to travel from the top of a continent to the bottom on foot, and 50 minutes to travel from the top to the bottom on a mount. That's one giant ass world. I think it takes roughly 1 hour to run on foot from the top of Eastern Kingdoms to the bottom in WoW, so maybe it's a similar size or slightly larger, and that doesn't take into consideration the massive fully explorable ocean with islands. I just hope that 10,000 concurrent players per server is enough to make such a large world feel populated. It was during this livestream that Stephen also mentioned that the open seas will be open PvP zones. A controversial decision, but one of the game's major design pillars is risk versus reward. There will be alternate methods of travel you could take to avoid PvP, such as flight paths between coastal nodes and airships, but these methods will not allow the transit of gatherables. The way I see it is that the open seas in Ashes of Creation is kinda similar to RuneScape's Wilderness. It will probably be a place where you can make some of the best money in the game, however you're going to need to be on guard at all times. Even if you disagree with this decision and aren't interested in actually partaking in the PvP, it's undeniable that there's a certain level of thrill associated with the possibility of being hunted down by other players. In RuneScape, for example, the Wilderness contains some of the best money-making PvE mobs in the game for players to farm. Does the fact that these players are sometimes hunted deter them? Not really. Instead, PvE players develop methods to run away, make things harder for PKers, and give themselves the best chance of escape with their loot intact. I'd expect it to be possible to do something similar in Ashes. Create specific builds or craft certain ships that allow PvE players to have a better chance of success in the game of cat and mouse on the seas of Vera. Finally, to wrap up this video, we've had a bit of drama in the Ashes of Creation community recently, following a video by Lucky Ghost bringing up concerns about the potentially polarizing nature of the PvP flagging system in Ashes of Creation. My take on this is that the video was pretty good and brought up some valid concerns that are clearly shared by a lot of people. However, I don't see the point in speculating too much about things that may or may not be design issues until we've had the chance to play and test the game. If the system is dog shit and the vast majority of people complain about it, then I think Intrepid will change things, but I don't see the point in doing so until we know the specifics of how players will inevitably abuse the system. This video's also brought up the debate on if the game should have separate PvP and PvE servers, and personally I think that's a bad idea because Steven has spent years designing this game with the intention that PvP is a major component that makes accomplishments have meaning. It's so deeply integrated into the game that having a new world style toggle or separate servers is going to fuck up a lot of systems. What's the point of the entire Caravan system with localized storage without the risk of PvP when you're transferring your goods? It's just going to feel like a system designed to waste your time. How about the game's bounty hunter system? Just delete it? Change the feeling of the open seas from being risk vs reward content where you're sailing around looting treasure whilst avoiding pirates, to being a pirateless ocean that you just numlock from one side to the other? In asking for separate PvP and PvE servers, you're basically asking the developers to balance two different versions of the game due to how PvP is so deeply integrated into every system. Sure, PvP and PvE servers can work in theme park MMOs like WoW, because PvP isn't so deeply tied into the systems and reward structure of the game. Imagine you're on a PvP server and a world boss spawns during a certain time window. After 2 hours, the boss will despawn. Maybe the boss isn't mechanically hard, but takes an hour to take down. The challenge is fending off other guilds also trying to contest the boss for a long period of time. Such an encounter would feel like a King of the Hill style engagement, and would probably reward great loot. This same boss on a PvE server would be boring as hell, because it's a sack of health in which the challenge was killing it whilst fending off other players. This boss would be killed on cooldown every day on a PvE server, whereas on a PvP server there might be some days where no single guild can take it down. I just feel like the way Ashes of Creation is designed, having a PvE server would almost feel like a tourist mode, because so much of the emotion and challenge in the game's experience will come from friction between players. Additionally, whenever a game takes such a massive deviation from their core vision and removes something that previously touches every system in the game, it typically doesn't go so well. So like I said, let's see how the current system works first. It's not as if there's no successful open PvP games. Lineage 2 was massive during its time, Arcade was huge at release but died due to reasons unrelated to its PvP system, and Black Desert Online has done pretty well over the years with a ton of pure PvE life skiller players enjoying it despite its highly flawed flagging system. If anyone can design an open world PvP flagging system that actually works well, I think Intrepid are the ones to do it. Who knows, if they actually do a good job, we might see more people start to see the value in the risk vs reward aspects that PvP can bring to an MMO. I can totally understand why people are so against PvP though, because in the past, let's be honest, other games have done a really bad job with it.
Oh my god, Oh my god, this guy's a clown. This guy is such a shill. And nobody should be supporting this guy, ever.
And to the people shitting on Lucky Ghost for having a Raid Shadow Legends ad in his video, I think that's kinda pathetic, honestly. If you was in his position and you knew the numbers behind YouTube, you would also take that ad. If you're putting an opinion out there on the internet for thousands of nerds to argue over, you're fucking stupid if you're not getting paid well for it. The amount of abuse that content creators deal with for simply having a different opinion can heavily affect mental health. Most people skip these ads anyway, anyone with a brain knows it's just reading from a script to get paid, and putting these small, easy to skip ads in videos often results in you getting paid 5 times the amount you'd get from regular YouTube AdSense. Remember that life is also an MMORPG and you need money to play it. But that's it for this Ashes of Creation update video. We've covered lots of stuff in this one, together with a bit of spicy drama at the end for good measure. If you enjoyed the content, then destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm gods, and go nuts in the comments with some healthy, constructive discourse, which the MMO community is famously known for. Social media on screen, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.